I still remember the moment as if it happened yesterday. There I was, standing at the edge of the company holiday party, clutching my drink like it was a life preserver. My palms were sweaty, my heart racing as I scanned the room filled with laughing colleagues. Someone from accounting caught my eye and waved. I raised my hand to wave back, but in my nervousness, I knocked my drink all over my shirt. As I frantically dabbed at the spreading stain, I noticed several people glancing my way, some with pity, others barely containing their amusement. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than for the floor to open up and swallow me whole. Have you ever felt that way? That crushing weight of social anxiety that makes even the simplest interactions feel like climbing Mount Everest? The constant internal monologue asking, what will they think of me? What if I say something stupid? Do I even belong here? If you are nodding your head right now, you are not alone. Social anxiety and shyness affect millions of people worldwide, holding them back from forming meaningful connections, advancing in their careers, and fully experiencing life. I know because I lived it. For years, I was the person who would rather text than call, who would avoid parties at all costs, and who would rehearse simple interactions in my head for hours beforehand. But what if I told you that social confidence is not something you are born with, but rather a skill that can be developed? What if, in just 30 days, you could transform from that person hiding in the corner to someone who walks into a room with genuine confidence and ease? This is not about becoming the loudest person in the room or adopting a fake extroverted persona. It is about finding comfort in your own skin, expressing yourself authentically, and connecting with others without that paralyzing fear. It is about building social intelligence in a way that feels natural to you. Over the next several minutes, I am going to share with you exactly what I would do if I wanted to go from shy to socially confident in just 30 days. This is not theory or wishful thinking. These are evidence-based strategies drawn from psychology, neuroscience, and the real-world experiences of people who have successfully made this journey. I have tested these methods myself and have seen them work for countless others. Before we dive in, I want you to understand something important. This transformation will not happen overnight. There will be uncomfortable moments. There will be setbacks. But with consistent effort and the right approach, you can make remarkable progress in just 1 month. So, what exactly happens in our brains when we experience social anxiety? Why do some people seem naturally at ease in social situations while others struggle? And most importantly, how can we rewire our thinking and behavior to build lasting confidence? Let me introduce you to Craig Jensen, a software developer who spent most of his life avoiding social interactions whenever possible. Craig was brilliant at his job, but his career had plateaued because he couldn't bring himself to speak up in meetings or network with colleagues. His shyness was not just affecting his professional life, but also leaving him isolated and lonely despite living in a bustling city filled with potential friends and partners. I always thought I was just wired differently, Craig told me. Like some people are born with social skills and some are not. I had accepted that this was just who I was. This is a common misconception. Research from the field of neuroplasticity shows that our brains remain malleable throughout our lives. The neural pathways that drive our social behaviors can be reshaped with consistent practice and the right strategies. In other words, social confidence is not a fixed trait, but a skill that can be developed at any age. But here is what makes this particularly challenging. When we experience social anxiety, our brain activates its threat response system. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, goes into overdrive, triggering a cascade of stress hormones. This biological response evolved to protect us from physical dangers, but in modern social contexts, it can be massively counterproductive. What is fascinating is that this same system that makes us feel so uncomfortable in social situations can be recalibrated. Through gradual exposure and positive reinforcement, we can teach our brains that social interactions are opportunities rather than threats. So, if I were to embark on a 30-day journey from shyness to social confidence, where would I begin? What would the first week look like? And how would I build upon those foundations to create lasting change? This brings us to our first critical question. What exactly is holding us back from being socially confident in the first place? Understanding the root causes of social anxiety is crucial for overcoming it. For many people, including Craig, Social anxiety stems from a combination of factors: genetic predisposition, past experiences of rejection or embarrassment, and deeply ingrained thought patterns that interpret social situations as threatening. Consider Melanie Cooper, a talented graphic designer who would often prepare extensively for client presentations only to freeze up when it was time to speak. I would have these scenarios running through my head where everyone was judging me, finding flaws in my work, thinking I was a fraud, she explained. What Melanie was experiencing is what psychologists call catastrophizing, envisioning the worst possible outcomes of a social interaction. This cognitive distortion is one of several that fuel social anxiety. Others include mind reading, assuming you know what others are thinking about you; personalizing, believing others' behaviors are reactions to you when they often have nothing to do with you; and black and white thinking, viewing a social interaction as either a complete success or a total failure. These thought patterns create a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we expect a social interaction to go poorly, we often behave in ways that make that outcome more likely. We might avoid eye contact, speak too softly, or give one-word answers that make it difficult for others to connect with us. Then, when the interaction inevitably feels awkward, we take it as confirmation of our inadequacy. Breaking this cycle requires addressing both the cognitive and behavioral components of social anxiety. It means challenging distorted thoughts while simultaneously practicing new social behaviors until they become second nature. But here is something many people miss. Effective social skills are not about performing or putting on a show. They are about presence, listening, and authentic expression. The goal is not to become someone else, but to become more fully yourself in social situations. This realization was transformative for Craig. "I always thought being good at socializing meant being the life of the party," he said. "When I realized it could mean being a good listener who asks thoughtful questions, something clicked. That was something I could actually see myself doing." With this understanding in mind, let us explore what the first week of our 30-day transformation might look like. How do we begin rewiring both our thoughts and behaviors to build social confidence? The first week is all about mindset shifts and small, manageable exposures to social situations. It is about laying the groundwork for bigger changes to come. Day 1. The journey begins with self-awareness. If I were starting this transformation, I would spend the first day carefully observing my thoughts during social interactions or even when just thinking about them. What stories am I telling myself? What assumptions am I making about how others perceive me? I would document these thoughts in a journal, creating a record that I could refer back to throughout the month. For Craig, this exercise revealed just how often he assumed others were not interested in what he had to say. "I realized I was deciding for other people that they would find me boring before I even opened my mouth," he said. This awareness alone did not solve the problem, but it made the invisible visible, which is the first step toward change. Day 2. On the second day, I would challenge myself to a small social interaction, perhaps making eye contact and smiling at 3 strangers throughout the day, or asking a barista how their day is going. The key is to choose something slightly uncomfortable but definitely doable. Melanie chose to compliment one colleague each day. It was scary at first, but their positive reactions started to challenge my belief that any attention I drew to myself would be negative. Day 3. By day 3, I would introduce a daily mindfulness practice. Research has shown that just 10 minutes of mindfulness meditation can reduce activity in the amygdala and strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thinking and impulse control. This helps create space between a social trigger and our reaction to it. Day 4. On day 4, I would focus on body language. Our physical posture not only communicates confidence to others, but can actually make us feel more confident. Harvard psychologist Amy Cuddy's research on power posing suggests that adopting expansive, confident postures for just 2 minutes can increase testosterone, associated with confidence, and decrease cortisol, associated with stress. Craig practiced power posing before meetings. "I felt ridiculous at first, standing in the bathroom with my hands on my hips like Superman," he laughed. "But I cannot deny that it changed how I felt walking into those meetings." Day 5. By day 5, I would be ready to tackle one of the most powerful tools for building social confidence: curiosity. When we are genuinely curious about others, we focus less on ourselves and our anxiety. I would challenge myself to learn one interesting thing about someone I interact with regularly but do not know well. Day 6. The 6th day would be about embracing imperfection. Social confidence is not about getting everything right. It is about being okay when things go wrong. I would intentionally do something slightly embarrassing, perhaps wearing mismatched socks or asking a question I already know the answer to, and observe that the world does not end. Day 7. To complete the first week, I would reflect on progress and setbacks, adjusting my approach as needed. This is not a linear process, and acknowledging that is part of the journey. By the end of this first week, I would have already begun to challenge the thoughts and behaviors that maintain social anxiety. But this is just the foundation. The real transformation happens as we build upon these basics in the weeks to come. But wait, how do we know if these strategies actually work? What does the research tell us about overcoming social anxiety? Studies consistently show that cognitive behavioral approaches, exactly the kind of thought-challenging and behavior-changing strategies we have outlined, are highly effective for social anxiety. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Anxiety Disorders found that CBT interventions produced significant improvements in social anxiety symptoms, with effects lasting long after the intervention ended. What is particularly encouraging is that these benefits can begin to appear relatively quickly. While complete transformation might take longer than 30 days, meaningful changes in both thoughts and behaviors can absolutely occur within this time frame. But here is where many people get stuck. They understand the concepts intellectually but struggle to implement them consistently. This is where our structured 30-day approach becomes crucial. By breaking down the process into daily practices and gradually increasing the challenge level, we make the transformation manageable. As we move into the second week of our journey, the focus shifts from foundation building to more direct social engagement. This is where the real growth begins to happen. Day 8. I would start the second week by identifying my social strengths. Even the shyest among us have aspects of social interaction where we excel. Perhaps I am a good listener, or I have a knack for remembering details about people's lives, or I can explain complex concepts clearly. Recognizing these strengths provides a foundation to build upon. For Melanie, this exercise was revelatory. I always focused on what I lacked socially, but when I really thought about it, I realized I was actually quite good at making people feel heard and understood. That became my starting point. Day 9. On day 9, I would practice active listening in at least one conversation. This means fully focusing on what the other person is saying rather than planning my response or worrying about how I am coming across. Active listening is powerful because it takes the pressure off performing and places the focus on the other person. Day 10. By day 10, I would be ready to expand my comfort zone by joining a group activity aligned with my interests. This might be a book club, a cooking class, or a recreational sports team. When we engage in activities we enjoy, the shared interest provides a natural conversation starter and reduces social pressure. Craig joined a coding meetup. Having a structured activity and a clear reason to be there made the social aspect feel less intimidating, he explained. Plus, I already had something in common with everyone there. Day 11. On day 11, I would tackle one of the most common challenges for shy people: initiating conversations. I would prepare 3 open-ended questions that could work in various contexts, such as, what has been keeping you busy lately? Or what are you looking forward to this week? Having these questions ready reduces the anxiety of not knowing what to say. Day 12. By day 12, it is time to address rejection sensitivity, the tendency to anticipate, perceive, and overreact to rejection. I would practice what psychologists call rejection exposure by putting myself in a situation where minor rejection is possible but not devastating. This might be asking for a small discount at a store or inviting an acquaintance for coffee. Melanie challenged herself to share an idea in team meetings, knowing it might not always be well received. The first time my suggestion was politely dismissed, I realized it did not feel as catastrophic as I had imagined. That was incredibly freeing. Day 13. On day 13, I would focus on authentic self-disclosure. Sharing appropriate personal information builds connection, but many shy people err on the side of revealing too little about themselves. I would practice sharing one piece of personal information in a conversation, such as a recent experience or a current goal. Day 14. To close out the second week, I would review my progress and celebrate small wins. Recognizing and appreciating growth, no matter how incremental, reinforces positive behavior and motivates continued effort. By this point in our journey, we would already be experiencing noticeable shifts. The constant internal monologue of worry would be quieter. Social interactions would feel less like performances and more like connections. And our confidence would be growing with each small success. But here is where many social confidence programs fall short. They focus exclusively on techniques without addressing the deeper psychological patterns at play. To create lasting change, we need to understand and work with these patterns. What exactly happens in our minds when we face social situations? Why do we sometimes freeze up or say things we later regret? And how can understanding these mechanisms help us respond more effectively? Social anxiety often activates what psychologists call the fight, flight, or freeze response. When we perceive a social threat, like the possibility of judgment or rejection, our sympathetic nervous system kicks into gear. Our heart rates increase, our palms might sweat, and our thinking becomes narrower and more rigid. In this state, it is difficult to access our full social capabilities. The key to overcoming this response lies in activating our parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode that promotes calm and clear thinking. Techniques like deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, and cognitive reframing can help us shift from threat response to a more balanced state. Understanding this biological mechanism gives us more compassion for ourselves when we struggle socially. It is not a character flaw or a lack of trying. It is a natural response that we can learn to manage. As we enter the third week of our transformation, we build upon this understanding to develop more advanced social skills and greater resilience in challenging situations. Day 15. I would begin the third week by focusing on conversational flow. Many shy people worry about awkward silences, but skilled conversationalists know that conversations naturally ebb and flow. I would practice allowing brief silences without rushing to fill them, recognizing that pauses give both parties time to think. Craig found this particularly challenging. I used to panic at the first sign of a lull and either blurt out something random or excuse myself entirely, he said. Learning to be comfortable with those moments of quiet completely changed how I experience conversations. Day 16. On day 16, I would work on managing social energy. Both shy people and confident socializers need to recharge, but the difference lies in how they manage their energy. I would practice setting boundaries, such as taking short breaks during extended social events or scheduling downtime after socializing. Day 17. By day 17, it is time to address the fear of public speaking, one of the most common social anxieties. I would find a small opportunity to speak in front of others, perhaps sharing a brief update in a meeting or offering a toast at a small gathering. The key is to start small and build gradually. Melanie volunteered to present a project update to her team. I prepared thoroughly and reminded myself that I was simply sharing information that people needed, not performing for judgment, she recalled. Framing it that way made it feel more manageable. Day 18. On day 18, I would focus on assertiveness, the ability to express needs and opinions respectfully without being passive or aggressive. I would practice making one assertive statement or request, using I statements and clear language. Day 19. By day 19, I would be ready to tackle humor, a powerful social tool that many shy people avoid for fear of falling flat. I would practice finding the lighter side of situations and perhaps sharing an amusing observation or story when appropriate. Craig discovered he had a talent for self-deprecating humor. Being able to laugh at my own social awkwardness actually made me less awkward, he observed. It signaled to others that I was self-aware and comfortable with myself. Day 20. On day 20, I would practice recovery from social missteps. Even the most socially skilled individuals occasionally say the wrong thing or misread a situation. The difference is in how they recover. I would intentionally embrace a small social error and practice responding with grace, perhaps with a simple "let me rephrase that" or a good-natured acknowledgement. Day 21. To complete the third week, I would again reflect on progress and identify areas for continued growth. At this point, the improvements would be more substantial, with noticeable changes in both comfort level and skill. As we enter the final week of our 30-day journey, the focus shifts to integration and sustainability. How do we ensure that these new thoughts and behaviors become second nature? How do we continue growing beyond the 30 days? The key lies in what psychologists call overlearning, practicing new skills beyond the point of initial mastery until they become automatic. This is particularly important for social skills, which need to be accessible even when we are under stress or distracted. Day 22. I would begin the final week by putting myself in a more challenging social situation than I would have attempted at the beginning of the month. This might be attending a networking event, joining a conversation with strangers, or speaking up in a large meeting. Melanie challenged herself to present at a client meeting. 6 months earlier, I would have found every possible excuse to avoid it, she said. But by this point, I had enough positive experiences to believe I could handle it. Day 23. On day 23, I would focus on expanding my social identity. How we see ourselves, our self-concept, powerfully influences our behavior. I would practice affirming my new social identity with statements like, "I am someone who connects easily with others," or "I am becoming more comfortable in social situations." Day 24. By day 24, I would work on personalizing my social approach. Authentic confidence means expressing ourselves in ways that feel genuine. I would identify aspects of social interaction that align with my personality and values, rather than trying to fit a generic mold of what social should look like. For Craig, this meant embracing his thoughtful, analytical approach to conversations. I stopped trying to be the quick-witted extrovert and started appreciating what I actually bring to interactions: depth, careful listening, and meaningful questions. Day 25. On day 25, I would practice maintaining social confidence during rejection or criticism. This might involve role-playing difficult interactions or reflecting on past situations where I felt rejected and reframing them from my new perspective. Day 26. By day 26, I would focus on helping others feel comfortable. One of the paradoxes of social confidence is that focusing on putting others at ease often alleviates our own anxiety. I would look for opportunities to welcome newcomers to groups or draw quiet individuals into conversations. Melanie found this approach transformative. When I started seeing myself as someone who could help others feel included, rather than just worrying about my own comfort, everything shifted. It gave me a purpose in social situations beyond just surviving them. Day 27. On day 27, I would work on authenticity in disagreement. Many shy people avoid expressing differing opinions for fear of conflict. I would practice respectfully disagreeing in a low-stakes situation, focusing on curiosity about the other person's perspective rather than proving a point. Day 28. By day 28, I would be integrating all these skills in my daily interactions, noticing how much more natural they feel compared to day 1. I would pay particular attention to moments of spontaneous confidence, those instances where I respond socially without overthinking. Day 29. On the penultimate day, I would reflect on the entire journey, documenting specific changes in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This creates a powerful record of progress that can sustain motivation going forward. Craig was surprised by how much had changed. I realized I had not had that pit-in-my-stomach feeling before meetings for weeks, he noted. And people were responding to me differently, inviting me to lunch, asking for my input. It was like a virtuous cycle had replaced the vicious one. Day 30. On the final day, I would not just celebrate the progress made, but create a specific plan for continued growth. This might include identifying the next level of social challenges to tackle, scheduling regular practice of the most impactful techniques, and setting up accountability systems to maintain momentum. At this point, the transformation would be remarkable, not because I would have become a different person, but because I would have become more fully myself in social situations. The constant self-consciousness would have diminished, replaced by greater present-moment awareness and authentic connection. But this brings us to perhaps the most important question of all. What is the deeper purpose of developing social confidence? Why does it matter beyond simply feeling more comfortable? Social connection is a fundamental human need. Research consistently shows that meaningful relationships are one of the strongest predictors of happiness, health, and longevity. When social anxiety holds us back from forming these connections, it robs us of one of life's most profound sources of fulfillment. Moreover, social confidence enables us to contribute our unique gifts to the world. Think of all the ideas that go unshared, the talents that remain hidden, and the perspectives that go unvoiced because of social fear. Developing social confidence is not just about personal comfort. It is about allowing ourselves to have the impact we are capable of having. This was certainly true for Melanie. As my confidence grew, I started sharing my creative ideas more freely, she said. 6 months later, I was leading my own design team, something I never would have pursued when I was held back by social anxiety. For Craig, the transformation extended beyond his professional life. I started dating again after years of avoiding it, he shared. I met my girlfriend at a friend's dinner party, the kind of event I used to dread. Now we host our own gatherings regularly, and I actually enjoy it. These stories illustrate an important truth. Social confidence is not the end goal. It is the gateway to a richer, more connected life. The real transformation happens not just in how we interact, but in what those interactions make possible. So, what exactly happens in the brain when we successfully build social confidence? How does this process change us at a neurological level? When we repeatedly practice new social behaviors and challenge anxious thoughts, we create new neural pathways that eventually become the path of least resistance. The amygdala becomes less reactive to social situations, while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking and impulse control, becomes more engaged. Perhaps most importantly, our brain's reward system begins to associate social interaction with pleasure rather than threat. The neurotransmitter dopamine, which plays a key role in motivation and reward, is released during positive social connections, reinforcing our desire to engage socially. This neurological shift explains why the process gets easier over time. What requires conscious effort in the beginning eventually becomes more automatic and natural. The brain literally rewires itself in response to our consistent practice. But there is one aspect of this journey we have not yet addressed: the inevitable setbacks. What happens when, despite our best efforts, we experience moments of anxiety or awkwardness? How do we prevent these moments from derailing our progress? Resilience in the face of setbacks is perhaps the most crucial skill for lasting social confidence. It is not about never feeling anxious again. It is about knowing how to recover when anxiety does arise. Melanie experienced this firsthand. About 3 months into my journey, I had to give a presentation to the executive team. I was more prepared than ever, but still found myself freezing up mid-presentation, she recalled. The old me would have taken this as proof that I was fundamentally incapable. The new me recognized it as part of the learning process. I took a deep breath, acknowledged the moment, and continued. Afterward, several executives complimented my presentation, completely unaware of my internal struggle. This ability to bounce back, to treat setbacks as data rather than defining moments, is what transforms temporary progress into lasting change. It is about developing what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset, the belief that our abilities are not fixed but can be developed through dedication and hard work. As our 30-day journey comes to a close, it is important to recognize that social confidence is not a destination but a continual practice. There will always be new social frontiers to explore, new skills to develop, and new aspects of ourselves to express. The difference is that we now have the tools and mindset to approach these challenges with curiosity rather than fear. The transformation from shy to socially confident is ultimately about freedom, the freedom to be ourselves, to connect authentically with others, and to participate fully in the human experience. It is about removing the invisible barriers that keep us isolated and allowing ourselves to belong. Craig summed it up beautifully. I used to think social confidence was about becoming someone else, someone louder, funnier, more impressive. Now I understand it is about becoming more fully myself in the presence of others. That is so much more sustainable and satisfying. If there is one technique I would recommend implementing immediately, it is this: practice mindful presence in your very next social interaction. Rather than focusing on how you are coming across or what you should say next, bring your full attention to the person in front of you. Notice their expressions, listen to their words, and allow yourself to respond naturally from that place of presence. This simple shift, from self-focus to other focus, can transform the quality of your interactions starting today. Social confidence is not about perfection or performance. It is about connection and authentic expression. It is about bringing your unique gifts into relationship with others. And that journey, from isolation to connection, from fear to freedom, from hiding to expressing, is one of the most rewarding transformations you can undertake. By breaking this journey into daily practices over 30 days, we make the seemingly impossible entirely achievable. Each small step builds upon the last, creating momentum that carries us forward even when the path becomes challenging. Remember that the goal is not to eliminate social anxiety entirely or to become someone you are not. The goal is to develop the skills and mindset that allow you to move through social anxiety and express yourself authentically. It is to expand your comfort zone gradually until the world becomes a place of opportunity rather than threat. The journey from shy to socially confident is not just about changing how others perceive you. It is about changing how you experience the world and your place within it. It is about creating a life rich in meaningful connection, authentic expression, and joyful participation. True social confidence is not about impressing others, but about being present with them, sharing our authentic selves, and receiving others with openness and curiosity. When we approach social situations from this perspective, we discover that confidence is not something we need to fabricate, but something that emerges naturally from genuine engagement. The most powerful way to transform your social life is not by becoming a different person, but by showing up as your true self with increasing courage and clarity.